I found out my wife was having an affair. To start with, I'm a 30-year-old office worker, and my wife is a 27-year-old housewife. We don't have any children. I sensed that my wife was having an affair simply because she was showing obvious signs. She started being cold towards me. She started wearing revealing outfits. She started going out more at night, and even stayed out overnight. She continuously refused to be intimate with me. She would never leave her phone. Her behavior was so off that, despite feeling bad about it, I ended up checking her phone. It was locked, but I knew her passcode since before our marriage, so I could check it with ease. And when I went through her phone, it was clear she was having an affair. Her phone had many photos saved on it, a lot of photos showing her looking close with some man I didn't recognize. Looking closely, I noticed that certain dates were marked in her phone's calendar. These dates matched the days she was out or stayed out overnight, and it seemed like they were meeting almost every day. What's more, it looked like she'd even been meeting her lover on our wedding anniversary, and even on my birthday. While at home, she'd celebrate with me, wishing me happy birthday. But behind my back, she was out with another man. I was speechless. It seems she's been having an affair for several months now. Thinking back, I can see why this might have happened. I was often busy with work, and I know I made my wife feel lonely. That probably prompted her to have an affair. And it seemed her heart was now leaning towards her lover. Many messages were left. They insulted me and talked about their love for each other. Incredibly, she had even messaged the man about divorcing me and marrying her lover. Seeing that, my heart was torn into pieces. I truly loved my wife. I greatly cherished her. But she didn't feel the same about me. I was lost and couldn't do anything but cry. Since then, I have changed. I started coming home as early as possible every day and actively helped with household chores. I would actively talk to her and worked to keep conversations going with her. In the beginning, my wife responded coldly. She just ignored me many times, even when I spoke to her. But I still kept talking to her. Although my wife wasn't on board, I even convinced her to go on a trip together. On weekends, I took her out to places like movie theaters and tourist spots, spending as much time as I could with her. On anniversaries, I would surprise her with gifts or cook for her. I spent every day trying to do something for my wife. It seemed she continued to meet her lover during this time. Still, I tried to stay as a couple with my wife. Thanks to my efforts, my wife gradually started to interact with me. We started having more conversations, laughing together, and even cooking together. Where should we go on our next day off? Where should we go on our next trip? My wife started to seem excited about these discussions. Little by little, I felt like the distance between us became close again. One day, I bought a weekly magazine to kill time at work and brought it home. When I got out of the bath, my wife was reading that magazine. As soon as she noticed me, she immediately put the magazine back on the desk and smiled at me. I guess she was reading an article about women having affairs. Then she asked me, "What would you do if I had an affair?" My heart fluttered a little. Nevertheless, I smiled at my wife. And then I said, "You'd never cheat on me." My wife responded jokingly, "How would you know?" I further explained, "Because I trust you. I believe you'd never do something like that." At that moment, her expression hardened slightly. I continued, "Honestly, I don't know if I'm a good husband for you, but I genuinely care for you, and I am definitely your husband. And as your husband, who else would trust you more? I can't speak for you, but I truly care for you. I sincerely love you." Upon hearing this, she suddenly started crying, and amidst her tears, she said, "Me too." From then on, she changed even more. She began talking to me more frequently. Though I felt guilty, I checked her phone a few times. Previously, she was meeting her lover almost every day, but the frequency had reduced to about 2 or 3 times a month. Their exchanges were mostly arguments, and I felt she was slowly returning to me. I was happy. I was confident that if things continued this way, her heart would return to me. And just as I had hoped, I felt her love for me growing deeper. I was able to reclaim my wife from her affair and amend our marriage. I am truly happy now, is what my wife believes. In reality, it was all preparation for my revenge. What would I do if my wife ever cheats on me? Simple answer, I would retaliate in every possible way. Indeed, I loved my wife. I truly loved her and fully believed her when she said she loved me. When I found out the affair, I truly believed it was my fault for neglecting her. But that photo was too much. It clearly showed the face of the other man, and their exchanges were horrific. What will we do if you get pregnant? It's okay, we'll just say it's that dork's child. You're terrible. Maybe we should just get married. I'd love that. I'll take alimony from the dork and divorce him. The worst part was, should we do it in the park again? But I'd be embarrassed if someone saw us. That might be fun. What a disgusting wife. Absolutely filthy. From now on, I won't call her my wife. I'll call her the filthy wife. They're really stupid. They left all the evidence behind. My emotions cycled through feelings of sadness, anger, disbelief, and laughter at the speed of light. I couldn't even feel sadness or anger anymore. There was no value in forgiving her. I decided to get a divorce. But that wasn't enough. At that moment, I decided to take revenge on those idiots. I quickly made copies and saved everything. It seemed like the filthy wife and her lover were meeting almost every day, so I anticipated that I could quickly gather evidence by hiring a private investigator. They were practically flaunting their relationship. They were making a fool of me. But then I started thinking, let's say I gather all the evidence and confront them. Considering the filthy wife's character, I could predict that she would insult me and leave. Of course, I intended to take alimony, but that wouldn't satisfy me. If we were getting divorced, I wanted my unfaithful wife to beg for my forgiveness with tears, for me to look down on her as I hand her the divorce papers with a smirk. How can I do that? It's quite simple. I just needed to win my wife back. And so, my battle began the following day. The following days were hellish. I did exactly as I wrote at the beginning. Meanwhile, I contacted a detective agency to gather evidence against my cheating wife. Since they were still meeting up every day, I got a call within a week saying that the investigator had gathered more than enough evidence. The old man at the detective agency even joked about how easy his job would be if it was always like this. Still, he diligently continued collecting more evidence. Yes, it was costing me a lot of money, but I didn't care. I planned to claim it all back later anyway. I also asked the detective agency to investigate the man she was cheating on me with. He was 28 at the time and worked for a pretty big company. That jerk was indeed married. When I covertly watched the guy's house from a distance, I was surprised. His wife was incredibly beautiful. In contrast, my cheating wife was neither beautiful nor cute. She was about a solid 5. Comparing my cheating wife with his wife, it was clear that his wife was far better looking. I couldn't understand why he would cheat on such a wife with mine. Despite all this, I was still trying to win my wife back, and I installed hidden cameras and recorders in the house. Since she often disappeared at night, I was able to collect a lot of evidence. By the way, my cheating wife goes to the gym at night. While I'm at work, her lover would come to my house in his suit for their secret meetings. Even when I was home, they would have their secret meetings outside. When I checked the recorder, I heard her saying, "disgusting," after receiving a gift from me. And the other night, she told her lover on the phone that she turned me down after I initiated some intimacy at night. Just picturing my cheating wife's downfall made me laugh uncontrollably. During this tormenting period, I noticed my cheating wife's attitude toward me gradually changing. She started responding with a smile when I spoke to her. She looked excited when I invited her on a trip, and the frequency of her meetings with her lover drastically decreased while their arguments increased. That's when I felt confident that her heart was starting to lean toward me again. Therefore, I decided to move to the final phase. When I got home, I left a tabloid paper featuring stories of wives' infidelity prominently on the table and went to take a bath. I was sure that my tabloid-loving cheating wife would definitely read it. If there wasn't a feature story, I planned to casually steer the conversation toward that topic. As I expected, my cheating wife asked what I would do if she cheated. And then, that bastard went on crying, talking about, "Me too." I was struggling to suppress my laughter. It was going exactly as planned, and I was desperately trying not to laugh. In fact, a few days later, there was a dinner planned with me, my cheating wife, and both of our parents. The plan was for all of us to get together for a meal once in a while. Of course, it was my idea. Everything was set in motion for that moment. The day arrived and the location was at my parents' house. There, everyone had gathered. The dinner was progressing smoothly, and then the time came. I began to pretend to cry. Even though no tears were coming out, I suddenly started crying, so naturally, everyone began to panic. Hey, Mike, what's going on? Mike? What happened? I'm sorry. From my perspective, it was a convincing performance. But I thought it might not be believable without tears, so I decided to go to the bathroom. There, I applied the eye drops that I had brought in my pocket. When I returned from the bathroom, I was in a state of overwhelming tears. Everyone was even more panicked. Then, finally, I began to speak. "I'm sorry, I lost my composure a bit." That's fine. But what on earth happened? Yes, I was just so happy being here, eating with everyone, that I felt sad thinking about it ending. Ending? What do you mean? Yeah, I'm sorry. Dad, Mom, father-in-law, mother-in-law. I'm getting a divorce. What? Everyone was dumbfounded. Especially my wife's expression was priceless. And there on out, everyone started pressing me. Especially my wife was extremely upset. I had no idea what she was saying. Then I pulled out an A3 envelope from the bag I brought. And from there, I pulled out several pictures. I noticed something strange about my wife a while ago, but I wanted to trust her. So, to confirm my trust in her, I decided to find out the truth. I felt guilty, but I had to know what was going on. And this is what I found. When I showed the pictures, everyone focused on them. At that moment, my wife froze. Not just my wife, everyone there, except me, was frozen. Of course they would be. Because those pictures, taken secretly by my investigator, showed my wife with another man. Among all the evidence pictures, these were the best shots I had chosen. Even in the night, their faces were clearly visible, showing how amazing cameras are these days. The faces of my wife and the other man were clearly visible. I was laughing inside. While pretending to cry and covering my face, I was hiding my grinning cheeks. Remembering it still gets me excited. Then, suddenly, my wife started screaming. The moment he heard that, my father-in-law lost his temper. "You filthy bastard!" He slapped my wife, and she was blown away. A critical hit, she was knocked out in one shot. But my wife's father didn't stop there. He took a mounted position and started a barrage of slaps. "You! How could you? How could you?" In the meantime, my mother-in-law moved in front of my father-in-law. and started hitting my wife on the head while shouting, "You! What a daughter you are!" In front of my wife's parents' combined attack, my wife had no way out. Finally, my parents regained their senses and tried to stop my wife's parents. I was still pretending to cry. After that, it was chaos for a while, but when things calmed down a bit, we started talking. The room was already like awake. The adulterous wife and her parents were stunned. My parents wore bitter expressions. My mom was crying. "I'm sorry, Mom." But I didn't let that stop and continued the conversation. By the way, I figured there was no need to act anymore, so I'd return to a neutral expression. "So, honey, what's this about?" It's not what it looks like. It's a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding, you say? In front of these perfectly taken pictures? What nonsense are you spouting? Misunderstanding? What do you mean?" "It's not like that. It's not like that." The conversation was going nowhere, so I decided to make my next move. I slowly stood up with my phone in my hand, and I made a call. "Hello?" "Yeah, it's me. Do you mind coming here now?" "Understood. I'll be there shortly." And I hung up. Everyone was once again left dumbstruck. After a while, a group arrived at my parents' house. It was a group of my wife's lover, his wife, and his parents. The moment we saw them, my cheating wife and both of our parents froze. The moment they entered the house, my wife's lover, his wife, and his parents all bowed down deeply. "My husband has caused you great inconvenience this time. No, it's not your fault. The infidelity of my husband is my responsibility." Then the guy's parents deeply bowed their heads. "I am his father. I don't know how to apologize for this." "There's no need. Please, raise your heads." But the guy refused to raise his head. He probably couldn't. His face had gone completely pale, and seeing that, his father lost his temper. "If you don't lower your head now!" The guy's father grabbed his head and forced it down. Rather, he pushed his face onto the floor. He hit his nose on the floor and started bleeding. While letting the nosebleed flow and half crying, he lowered his head, trembling. Seeing this, my cheating wife was shivering. It was a good sight. It really was a fabulous sight. A few days before this day, I had actually been in contact with the guy's wife. I showed her the evidence I had collected and told her about her husband's infidelity. The other man's wife was crying. According to her, he showed no signs of cheating. She just said that her husband had been busy with work, and she had been waiting for him to come home late every night to take care of him. What a pitiful story. Despite waiting for her husband till late, he was outside cheating on her with my filthy wife. So, I told her about my plan for today and arranged for the guy's parents to come with her when I called. Well, the guy's gotta be here for a show like this. After that, a big meeting was held. My cheating wife and her lover were slurring out sloppy explanations. Next to each of them were their own fathers seated, and if they said something ridiculous, the fathers would punch them and shut them up. It took some time, but eventually the whole picture came into view. They had met about a year and a half ago. It all started when the guy hit on my wife while she was walking outside. At first, they were meeting secretly, but as they got too comfortable, believing that neither I nor the guy's wife had a clue, they started seeing each other almost daily and became close friends. Then they started denying that they had romantic feelings for each other, insisting that the only people they truly loved were their own respective partner. I decided to play a recording I had. "Baby, I love you. I don't care about that loser anymore." "Damn, sweetie, I love you more than my wife." "Oh, baby, let's get married." That was my favorite voice record of the two. The moment they heard that, the guy's face turned from pale to green, and the woman screamed an ultrasonic wail. Simultaneously, their fathers resumed their public execution. I decided to get to the main point. First, let the guy's wife press him down. She faced to her husband and glared at him. I think you already understand this, but we can't continue our marriage anymore. Let's get a divorce. What? Wait a minute. Shut up and nod. Again, he threw a straight punch. Ignoring the heated scene, I proceeded to bring up my demand. Let's settle things between us, too. You mean... divorce, obviously. No, anything but that. Are you stupid? After all this, you can still say that? Listen, Mike, I really like you. I love you. Like I could trust that. It's true. I realized how important you are. I don't care about that man anymore. It's only you. What about that? You didn't care about our marriage? No, I really do love you. Of course, no one would believe such a woman's words. I was maintaining my composure, but only I knew. That was her true feelings. Yes, all the hardships I went through for her until now were all for this moment. She had completely fallen back in love with me, but I pushed it away, abandoned it, and trampled on it. I looked down on her. I really looked down on her. Underneath, she clung to my leg, crying and begging for forgiveness. I couldn't stand it anymore. Something like a lump in my heart seemed to be pulled out. I felt like I could fly if I closed my eyes. Such a refreshing feeling took over me. Advancing the discussion was difficult. In the meantime, the guy's parents left my house. They left to finish their discussion at their place. They assured me to immediately pay some amount of alimony in cash. In return, they asked to avoid a lawsuit. I agreed to that and ended the discussion with them after I had them sign my pre-prepared document of agreement. Now, on to my cheating wife. Honestly, I think she was on the verge of going mad. She collapsed, crying with a blank expression, and screamed every time the topic of divorce came up. I was wondering why she was playing the victim at that time. Since she was not making any sense, I decided to talk to her parents. Their request was the same. They would definitely pay the alimony, no matter the amount, since what their daughter did was unforgivable. But they wanted to avoid any lawsuits. No matter what she did, she was still their daughter, after all. That was their say. Frankly, at that point, I was satisfied just seeing the devastated sight of my cheating wife. All I wanted was for them to cover the expenses for hiring a detective and my legal consultation fees. Over the next few days, I went back and forth to my wife's parents' house, and after talking with my hysterical wife and her parents, I managed to get a signature on a written oath and arranged the divorce papers. After some time, I received alimony payments from both of them. I won't mention the specific amount, but it was a considerable sum. Well, since then, my filthy wife, no, my now ex-wife, started acting like a stalker. No matter how many times her parents brought her back, she wouldn't stop. Fed up, I quit my job and moved. I had a job lined up in my new location, thanks to my acquaintance. The pay was a bit lower, but the job was more rewarding than my previous one. Of course, I didn't tell my ex-wife's parents about my new place. I also canceled my phone contract and called my parents with a blocked number. And that brings us to the end. Looking back, my revenge on my wife did ruin her down big time. She became a stalker and I had to move. Her parents had to keep her at home and seemed to be having a hard time. That part does make me feel guilty. I couldn't forgive my ex-wife, but I had no grudge against her parents. Still, I'm really glad that I was able to cut ties with them. As for the guy she cheated on me with, he also got divorced and seems to have been disowned by his parents. Moreover, he's apparently being sued for by a significant amount of alimony by his ex-wife. His ex-wife didn't demand alimony from my ex-wife, but instead demanded it all from him. Because of those payments, he's struggling every month. I heard this from his ex-wife. Actually, we've been meeting quite often recently. We're not ready to consider marriage or anything like that yet, but we're on good terms. This is the revenge I took. I'll be starting work next week, so I thought I'd write this down as a memento. Sorry if this story is boring, but excuse me, because it's just for my self-satisfaction. I tried to write down everything that happened on the surface and the plans I had behind the scenes, but it turned out to be an enormous story. That just shows how much preparation I did and how many people were involved. Really, it was incredibly hard. When I first started planning, I didn't think it would be so tough. Pretending to get along with a wife who betrayed me, even as an act, was hard enough to almost ruin my mental. There were times when it was so mentally tough that I felt like throwing up. So, when I finally pulled it off, I felt a great sense of achievement emerge within me that was separate from the satisfaction I got from my revenge.